My fingers were trembling so violently that I nearly dropped the piece of plastic on the marble counter. It didn't look like a bank card. It looked like a relic, something you'd find in a dusty box at a yard sale, not in the pristine, air-conditioned silence of the First National Reserve. The magnetic strip on the back had a deep scratch running through it, and the numbers on the front were so faded they looked like ghosts of digits long past. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, a burning shame that pricked at my eyes. I looked down at my shoes, worn sneakers with a scuff on the toe, and then at the banker. His name tag said Mr. Sterling. He looked like he cost more than my entire life. Perfect gray suit, rimless glasses, a watch that probably ticked louder than my heart was pounding. "I'm so sorry to bother you with this," I whispered, my voice cracking. "It's really old. My father gave it to me a long time ago. I need to see if there's anything on it. Maybe a few dollars. Just enough for a meal. Please." Mr. Sterling didn't sneer. He didn't roll his eyes. He just gave me a polite, tight smile. "Let's see what we can find, ma'am." He took the card. He turned it over. He squinted at the faded strip. Then he slid it through his card reader. I held my breath. I was expecting the beep of rejection. I was expecting him to slide it back and tell me the account had been closed for a decade. I was prepared to walk out of those heavy brass doors and back into the sweltering heat with absolutely nothing. But the beep didn't come. Instead, Mr. Sterling froze. It wasn't a subtle pause. It was the kind of stillness that happens when a car crash occurs right in front of you. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he was having a stroke. His eyes went wide behind his rimless glasses, and his mouth fell open, just a fraction. He looked at the screen. Then he looked at me. Then back at the screen. His hands, which had been so steady a moment ago, started to shake. "Ma'am," he croaked. He cleared his throat and tried again, louder this time, but with a tremor I couldn't place. "Ma'am, could you please come behind the counter? Right now?" My stomach dropped through the floor. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. "What? Why? Is something wrong? Please, I didn't steal it. I didn't do anything. Just come with me." It wasn't a request. He was already standing up, waving a hand toward a security guard. Two uniformed men started walking toward us. The air in the bank seemed to vanish. Everyone was staring. A woman with a crying baby hushed her child to look at me. An elderly man whispered to his wife. I felt like a criminal. I felt like I was shrinking, dissolving into the floor. Had my father done something illegal? Was I about to be arrested because of a piece of plastic I'd found in an old jacket? "I don't understand," I whispered, tears finally spilling over. "I didn't do anything wrong." Mr. Sterling was already guiding me through a heavy oak door marked private. The security guards fell in behind us like silent sentinels. My legs felt like jelly. I was walking, but I wasn't really there. My mind was racing back to 3 days ago. Back to the moment my life ended. 3 days ago, I had been standing on the sidewalk of a sprawling colonial house in the suburbs. White shutters, manicured lawn, the kind of house that screams success. I had spent 12 years in that house. 12 years painting the walls, planting the hydrangeas, hosting dinner parties for people I didn't even like. 12 years building a life with Marcus. And in 3 minutes, Marcus had burned it all to the ground. He had stood in the doorway, arms crossed over his chest, his Italian suit perfectly pressed. Behind him, lurking in the foyer like a shadow, was Vanessa, his business partner. The woman who had eaten at my table, laughed at my jokes, and then slept with my husband while I was visiting my sick aunt. She was already touching the curtains. My curtains. "Elara, you need to leave. Now." Marcus's voice had been cold. Not angry. Just cold. Like he was firing an incompetent intern. "But, the house, our things." I had stammered, clutching my purse. "The lawyers made it clear, Elara. The house is in my name. The cars are in my name. The accounts are in my name. You signed the prenup. You signed the papers last week. It's done." I didn't sign. "I thought those were tax documents. You said they were for the business audit." He had smirked then. A cruel, jagged twisting of his lips. You really should read what you sign, darling. Now go. You're making a scene. But I have nowhere to go. Marcus, please. We were married for 12 years. I supported you when you had nothing. I gave up my career for you. And I gave you 12 years of a comfortable life. We're even. Vanessa had stepped forward then, wrapping a possessive arm around his waist. She looked at me with fake, dripping sympathy. It's really for the best, Elara. You'll see. Sometimes people just outgrow each other. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw a rock through the window. But I was so tired. So completely hollowed out by months of gaslighting and lies. So I had picked up my single suitcase, one suitcase for 12 years of life, and walked away. I checked my purse when I got to the end of the driveway. I had $43. $43 and a broken heart. Now, sitting in Mr. Sterling's plush leather chair, watching him type furiously on his computer, I felt that same hollowness. I was waiting for the final blow. I was waiting for him to tell me the card was fraudulent and the police were on their way. Mr. Sterling stopped typing. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. When he looked at me, the fear was gone, replaced by something else. Awe? Confusion? Respect? Mrs. Morton. Elara. I need to verify your identity. Can you show me your driver's license? My hands shook so badly I could barely unzip my wallet. I handed it to him. He studied it, comparing the name to the screen. Your mother's maiden name? Calloway. I whispered. Your father's full name? Arthur. Arthur Vance. Where was he employed? He was a superintendent. For an apartment building downtown. He fixed toilets. He changed light bulbs. Mr. Sterling let out a long, shaky breath. He turned the monitor toward me. Mrs. Morton, I have worked at this bank for 30 years. I have managed portfolios for CEOs and celebrities. But I have never seen anything like this. I squinted at the screen. Rows of numbers. Transaction histories going back nearly 2 decades. And at the bottom, a number in bold black text. I blinked. I counted the commas. I counted the zeros. That's a mistake, I whispered. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. It's no mistake, Mr. Sterling said softly. I've checked it 3 times. The system doesn't lie. But that says $47 million. The room tilted. I gripped the mahogany desk to keep from sliding off the chair. 47 million. It was a number that didn't make sense. It was a phone number. A serial code. It wasn't money. Not for me. Not for Elara, the daughter of a janitor who patched his work boots with duct tape because he couldn't afford new ones. Your father was a very careful man, Mr. Sterling said, pouring me a glass of water from a crystal carafe. He pushed it toward me. Breathe, Elara. Breathe. My father was poor. I choked out, pushing the water away. We ate pasta 4 nights a week. He walked 5 miles to work because he said the bus fare was wasteful. He didn't have $47 million. He didn't have it then, Mr. Sterling corrected gently. He pulled up a document on the screen. It was yellowed, scanned in from a physical paper. 25 years ago, your father inherited a small, useless plot of land from an uncle. It was in the industrial district. Warehouses, grime, nothing special. A developer approached him. They wanted to buy it for a parking lot. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Dad never told me. He wouldn't have. He was a private man. But he was smart. Smarter than anyone gave him credit for. Instead of taking a cash payout, which would have been maybe $20,000 at the time, he negotiated a contract. He kept the land title, but leased the rights for 99 years, in exchange for 5% of all future gross profits generated on that specific plot. I shook my head. 5% of a parking lot? That's pennies. The developer didn't build a parking lot, Elara. They merged the plot with 3 others. They built the Hartley Tower complex. I gasped. The Hartley Tower? It was the centerpiece of the city. A massive, gleaming skyscraper filled with luxury condos, high-end retail, and law firms. It was where the billionaires lived. That building sits on your father's land, Mr. Sterling said. And for 20 years, 5% of every lease, every retail sale, every condo fee has been deposited automatically into this trust. An irrevocable trust. But why? Why didn't he use it? We struggled. I watched him work until his back gave out. Why did he let us live like that? Mr. Sterling looked down at the file, his expression softening. There's a note here. A directive on the trust. It says, to be released to my daughter, Elara, only upon my death, or when she reaches the age of 35. Whichever comes later. The funds are to be kept secret until such time. No spouse, no creditor, and no family member may access these funds. Sole beneficiary, Elara Vance. He paused, looking me dead in the eye. He knew Elara. He knew that if you grew up with this kind of money, it might ruin you. Or worse, it would attract the kind of people who would want to ruin you for it. He wanted you to learn how to survive first. He wanted you to build your own character. I started to cry. Not the polite, silent tears from the lobby. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook my entire body. I thought about my dad, sitting in his worn-out armchair, reading the newspaper by the light of a single lamp to save electricity. I thought about him pressing that card into my hand a week before he died. Keep this safe, Ellie. Use it when you really need it. When you have no other choice. He had watched me struggle. He had watched me marry Marcus. He had watched me drift away, trying to fit into a high society world that never really accepted me. And he had stayed silent, guarding this secret, waiting for the moment I would need freedom more than I needed comfort. He gave me a choice, I whispered through my tears. Yes, Mr. Sterling said. He gave you the ultimate choice. But Elara, there is something else you need to know. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. What? Mr. Sterling tapped a key, and a red flag icon appeared on the screen. 3 months ago, someone made an inquiry into this trust. They used your social security number. They tried to bypass the security protocols to see the balance. My blood ran cold. 3 months ago? That was right before. Right before Marcus filed for divorce, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Mr. Sterling nodded grimly. We blocked the request because the inquirer didn't have the physical key, the card you're holding right now. But they knew the account existed. They were fishing. They were looking for assets. Marcus. It all made sense. The sudden coldness. The rush to get me to sign the business audit papers, which were actually a waiver of assets. The private investigator charges I had seen on our credit card statement that he claimed were for background checks on employees. He knew. Or he suspected. He went digging. He found out there was a trust, but he couldn't get to the money. The trust was ironclad. Inheritance is not marital property unless it's commingled. If I had known about the money during the marriage, he might have charmed me into putting it in a joint account. But since I didn't know, he couldn't touch it. So he tried to destroy me instead. He wanted to leave me with nothing, so I would come crawling back, I realized, my voice hardening. He wanted me desperate. He figured if I was starving, I'd eventually find the account, and then I'd be so grateful to him for taking me back that I'd share it. Or, Mr. Sterling suggested, he simply realized he couldn't get it, got angry, and decided to discard you before you became powerful. A fire ignited in my chest. It wasn't the shame I had felt in the lobby. It wasn't the heartbreak I had felt in the driveway. It was rage. Pure, white-hot, focused rage. Marcus thought I was weak. He thought I was the superintendent's daughter who got lucky marrying a real estate mogul. He thought I would fade away into poverty, crying over him. I looked at the number on the screen again. $47,482,000. I looked at Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, I said, sitting up straighter. I need a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer. I need a shark. And I need a new outfit. Mr. Sterling smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. I think we can arrange that, Elara. Welcome to the rest of your life. I walked out of the bank through a service exit that opened into an alleyway. Mr. Sterling had insisted. He said that walking through the main lobby with the look on my face and the black Amex Centurion card he had just expedited into my hand would be like walking through a shark tank with a cut on my leg. He was right. I felt different. The air smelled the same, exhaust fumes and old coffee, but the world looked sharper. The buildings didn't look like monoliths designed to crush me anymore. They looked like puzzles I now had the pieces to solve. But first, I had to stop looking like a victim. I walked 3 blocks to a boutique I had passed 1,000 times but never dared to enter. The salesgirl looked up from her phone, her eyes scanning my scuffed sneakers and my wrinkled shirt. She opened her mouth, probably to tell me the restroom was for customers only, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked straight to a mannequin wearing a structured charcoal blazer and tailored trousers. "I need this," I said, my voice steady. "In a size 4. And I need a silk blouse. Cream. And heels. Black. 3 inches. The girl hesitated, a smirk playing on her lips. "Ma'am, the blazer alone is—" I pulled the black card from my pocket and set it on the glass counter with a quiet clack. "I'm in a hurry." The smirk vanished. The color drained from her face faster than it had from Mr. Sterling's. 10 minutes later, I walked out of that store leaving my old clothes in their trash bin. I caught my reflection in a shop window. The frightened, desperate woman who had cried in the bank lobby was gone. Staring back at me was someone cold. Someone ready for war. Mr. Sterling had set up the meeting with Silas Thorne. Thorne wasn't just a lawyer. He was a weapon. His office was on the 45th floor of a building that looked down on the city like a judge on a dais. When I walked into his conference room, he didn't stand up. He was sitting at the head of a long glass table, reading a file. He didn't look like a lawyer. He looked like a boxer who had learned to wear a tie. "Mrs. Morton," he said, not looking up. "Or do you prefer Miss Vance?" "Elara," I said, taking the seat opposite him. "Just Elara." He finally looked up. His eyes were gray and unnervingly still. He tapped the file in front of him. "Mr. Sterling briefed me. 47 million. Secret inheritance. A nasty divorce finalized 3 days ago. And an ex-husband who thinks he won." "He thinks he destroyed me," I corrected. Thorne smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was predatory. "Oh," he tried. "I've been looking into Marcus Morton for the last hour. Your ex-husband is a very interesting man, Elara. He projects wealth. He projects power. But you know what happens when you peel back the wallpaper on a house with termites?" I leaned forward. "Tell me." "He's broke, Elara." I blinked. "That's impossible." He has the house, the cars, the development company. We were invited to every gala in the city. "Leverage," Thorne said, sliding a piece of paper across the glass. "It's all debt. He mortgaged the house to pay for the cars. He leveraged the company to buy the new land for the riverfront project. He's floating on a sea of loans, and the tide is going out. That's why he divorced you." I frowned, trying to make the math work in my head. "But if he's broke, why leave me? Why not keep me around?" "Because he found out about the trust," Thorne said, his voice dropping to a low rumble. "Or at least, he knew there was something. My investigators found a ping on your credit report from a PI agency 6 months ago. Marcus was digging. He found the existence of the Hartley Trust, but he couldn't see the balance, and he couldn't access it. He knew you were sitting on a gold mine, but he couldn't touch it as your husband because of the ironclad inheritance laws. So he discarded me?" "No," Thorne shook his head. "He evicted you. He stripped you of resources. He made you homeless." "Why?" "Because he needed you to be desperate. He needed you to find that money while you were starving, broken, and alone. He gambled that if you were at rock bottom, you'd come crawling back to him for help. And then, once you reconciled, he'd convince you to move that money into a joint account to save the family business." My stomach churned. It was so calculated. So evil. He didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to break me so he could rebuild me as his personal ATM. "He underestimated you," Thorne said, closing the file. "He thought you were weak. He thought you were just the superintendent's daughter who got lucky. He didn't account for the fact that Arthur Vance raised a survivor." I looked out the window at the sprawling city. I felt a strange calm settling over me. The grief for my marriage evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "What do we do?" I asked. Thorne leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Well, we have 2 options. Option A, you take your money, you move to the south of France, and you live a beautiful life while Marcus slowly drowns in his own debt. It's the healthy choice. And option B?" Thorne's eyes glittered. "Option B is we verify the rumors." "Rumors?" "There are whispers, Elara. Whispers that Marcus's construction cuts corners. That he's not just broke, he's dangerous. If we investigate him, really investigate him, we might find enough to not just sue him, but to bury him. But it will be ugly. It will be war. I thought about Vanessa touching my curtains. I thought about Marcus sneering at me in the doorway. I thought about the $43 in my purse. I don't want to go to France, Mr. Thorne. He grinned, showing too many teeth. Good. I'll start the paperwork. I left the office feeling like I was vibrating. I needed to get back to the hotel Mr. Sterling had arranged for me, a suite at the Ritz, under an assumed name, but my phone started buzzing in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in 8 years. Beatrice. My sister. My thumb hovered over the decline button. We hadn't spoken since Dad's funeral. She had called him a failure. She had screamed at me for throwing my life away on an art degree before I met Marcus. She had accused Dad of loving me more because he paid for my books while she had to work through community college. She didn't know he had paid for my books by selling his only watch. I shouldn't have answered. But the adrenaline from the meeting with Thorne was still pumping through my veins. I swiped right. Hello, Beatrice. I didn't even get a breath in before she started. Is it true? Her voice was shrill, tight with an emotion that sounded like a mix of fury and greed. Is what true, Beatrice? Don't play dumb with me, Elara. The money. Everyone in the old neighborhood is talking about it. Mrs. Higgins saw you at the bank. She said the manager took you to the back. She said you looked like a vagrant but walked out like a queen. Did Dad leave money? I walked toward a waiting taxi, signaling the driver. Dad left a trust. Yes. How much? Beatrice, this isn't. How much, Elara? 47 million, I said quietly. The silence on the other end was deafening. It lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard a sound that chilled me. A low, strangled laugh. 47 million. And he let me work double shifts at the diner? He let me drive a car with no heat? He let me struggle to pay my mortgage while he was sitting on $47 million? He didn't touch it, Beatrice. I snapped, my patience snapping. He lived in that basement apartment until the day he died. He fixed toilets. He didn't spend a dime of it. Because he was saving it for you. She screamed. It's always been you. Daddy's little princess. You marry a rich guy, live in a mansion for 12 years, and now you get the golden parachute? What about me? I'm his daughter too. The trust was in my name, Beatrice. He made a choice. He was senile. He was crazy. And you're a thief. You manipulated him. You probably knew about it all along. That's why you never helped him. You were just waiting for him to die. My hand tightened on the phone until my knuckles turned white. That is a lie. I loved him. You were the one who called him a loser at his own birthday party. You were the one who didn't show up to the hospital when he had pneumonia because you had a date. I want my share, Elara. Half. I want half. Or I'm going to sue. I'll tie that money up in court for 20 years. You won't see a dime. You can try, I said, my voice dropping to the same cold tone Marcus had used on me. But the trust is irrevocable. And I have a lawyer now. A very expensive one. You selfish bitch. You think you're better than us? You think money changes who you are? You're still just the girl who ran away to marry a wallet. I'm coming for you, Elara. I'm going to tell everyone what you really are. I hung up. I stood on the sidewalk, trembling. Not from fear this time, but from a deep, aching sadness. The money hadn't even been in my possession for 4 hours, and it was already revealing the rot in everyone around me. Marcus. Beatrice. I got into the taxi. Where to, lady? The driver asked. I looked at the city skyline, where the lights were starting to flicker on in the twilight. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably drinking scotch, thinking he had one. Somewhere, Beatrice was plotting. The Ritz, I said. And then, take me to the old neighborhood. I need to see something. I needed to see the building. The one my father had maintained. The one I had grown up in. I needed to remember who I was before the suits and the millions and the betrayal. Because Thorne was right, this was going to be a war. And if I was going to fight, I needed to know exactly what I was fighting for. But as the taxi pulled away, I didn't notice the black sedan pulling out of the traffic to follow us. I didn't notice the man behind the wheel, speaking rapidly into a phone. "She's moving," the man said. "I have eyes on her." "You were right, Mr. Morton. She found it." The ghost in the basement and the concrete tomb. The taxi rumbled over potholes that felt like memories. This was the part of the city the street sweepers forgot: cracked sidewalks pushing up weeds, bodegas with barred windows, and the relentless, rhythmic thrum of hip-hop bass rattling from passing cars. I paid the driver and stepped out in front of the brick tenement building where I had spent the first 18 years of my life. It looked smaller than I remembered. The fire escape was rusting, bleeding orange streaks down the brickwork like old wounds. I still had the key. I kept it on my keychain, a stubborn piece of metal I refused to throw away even when I was living in a mansion with 12 bedrooms. I walked down the concrete steps to the basement entrance. The air grew cooler, heavier, smelling of damp earth and lemon cleaning fluid. My father's smell. I unlocked the door and stepped into the darkness. It was empty now, cleared out by the landlord a week after the funeral, but the ghost of the room remained. I could see the imprint of his armchair on the linoleum. I could see the shadow on the wall where his crucifix had hung. I stood in the center of the room, closing my eyes, trying to summon him. "Dad," I whispered into the silence. "Why?" I imagined him standing there in his gray jumpsuit, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. I imagined his tired smile. "Because comfort makes you soft, Ellie. And you needed to be strong." He hadn't left me the money to buy a life. He had left me the money to defend one. He knew that the world was full of wolves like Marcus and Beatrice. He knew I couldn't fight them with kindness alone. I needed armor. I opened my eyes. The sadness was gone. In its place was a cold, quiet clarity. I wasn't just Elara Vance, the janitor's daughter. And I wasn't Mrs. Morton, the discarded wife. I was the heir to a fortune built on patience and grit. And I was done running. I turned to leave, pushing the heavy metal door open, and stopped dead. A black sedan was parked directly across the narrow street, blocking the taxi I had called to wait for me. The engine was idling, a low, menacing growl. The driver's door opened. Marcus. He looked like a wreck. His tie was loosened, his hair was ungelled and falling across his forehead, and his eyes were rimmed with red. He didn't look like the master of the universe anymore. He looked like a cornered animal. "Elara," he shouted, striding across the street, ignoring a honking delivery truck. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I stood on the sidewalk, planting my heels into the cracked concrete. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" "I know," he hissed, stopping just inches from me. The smell of scotch and stale mints radiated off him. "I know you went to the bank. I know you met with Silas Thorne. My PI saw everything. You're following me? I'm protecting my interests," he shouted, his voice echoing off the brick walls. "That money, whatever secret stash your old man was hiding, that's marital property, Elara. We were married when he died. That makes it ours." I laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound that seemed to surprise him. "You really need to fire your lawyers, Marcus. Inheritance kept in a separate trust is not marital property. You can't touch a dime of it. And, even if you could, you signed a waiver. Remember? The business audit papers?" His face twisted. That vein in his forehead, the one that used to terrify me because it meant he was about to break something, began to throb. "I will tie you up in court for a decade. I will freeze your assets. I will make sure you starve before you spend a single dollar." "No, you won't," I said softly. "Because you can't afford a lawyer, Marcus. Silas told me everything. You're drowning. You're leveraged to the hilt. You're here, screaming at me in front of a basement apartment because you need a bailout. You're not a wolf, Marcus. You're a tick. And I just lit a match." He lunged. It happened so fast I barely processed it. His hand shot out, grabbing my upper arm, his fingers digging into my flesh. "You listen to me, you ungrateful little." "Hey!" The voice boomed from the top of the stairs. We both froze. Standing there was Mr. Henderson, the new super. He was 6'4" and held a heavy wrench in his hand like a baseball bat. "Get your hands off her, buddy. Or I'll open your skull." Marcus looked at Mr. Henderson, then at the wrench, then at me. He released my arm with a shove. He stepped back, straightening his jacket with trembling hands, trying to regain a shred of dignity. This isn't over, Elara. You think you've won? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I think I do, I replied, my voice steady. Goodbye, Marcus. He glared at me one last time, a look of pure, concentrated hatred, before turning and storming back to his car. I watched him drive away, tires screeching, leaving a cloud of exhaust in his wake. You okay, Miss Elara? Mr. Henderson asked, lowering the wrench. I rubbed my arm where Marcus's fingers had left red marks. I looked at the spot where his car had been. I'm better than okay, Mr. Henderson. I'm inspired. 2 hours later, I was back in Silas Thorne's office. The city lights were glowing below us, a carpet of diamonds, but the mood in the room was dark. Silas wasn't smiling. He had spread a series of blueprints and documents across the glass table. You were right to come straight here, Silas said, pouring me a cup of black coffee. Marcus is desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. But what I found? Elara, this is worse than debt. This is prison. I looked at the blueprints. They were for the Riverfront Plaza, Marcus's crown jewel project. A massive residential complex meant to house 300 families. What am I looking at? Silas tapped a section of the document marked Materials Manifest. Marcus ran out of money 6 months ago. The banks cut him off. But he couldn't stop construction because if he missed the deadline, he'd trigger penalty clauses that would bankrupt him instantly. So, he got creative. He fired the union contractors and hired a shell company to source the materials. And they're using non-compliant concrete, Elara. They're cutting the steel reinforcement budget by 60%. He's building a tomb. If there's a fire, a tremor, or even just high winds, those buildings will come down. I stared at the paper. I felt sick. I remembered the gala where he announced this project. He had stood on stage, holding a glass of champagne, talking about building the future for families. He knows? I whispered. He signed the purchase orders, Silas said, sliding a paper toward me with Marcus's aggressive, jagged signature at the bottom. He knows. He's gambling that he can finish the build, sell the units, take the cash, and disappear before the cracks start showing. He's risking hundreds of lives to save his own skin. My hand hovered over the signature. This was the man I had slept next to for 12 years. The man I had loved. I realized then that I had never really known him. I had loved a mask. So, what do we do? Do we sue him? Silas leaned back, his eyes dark. A lawsuit takes years. By the time we get a judgment, people will be living in those apartments. Families. Children. We don't have time for a lawsuit. We need a nuclear option. What option? We expose him, Silas said. But we have to be careful. If we leak this to the press without absolute proof, he'll sue you for defamation and win. We need the original engineer's report. The one he buried. The one that says the building is unsafe. Where is it? My sources say it's in his private safe. In the penthouse. The penthouse you technically still have a key to, because the locks haven't been changed on the service elevator yet. I went cold. You want me to break into my old home? Silas shook his head. No. I want you to go home. The divorce decree says you have 30 days to remove your personal effects. He kicked you out early illegally. You have a legal right to be in that apartment to collect your property. If you happen to find a damning report while looking for your, let's say, old photo albums, that's just good luck. But he's there. Vanessa is there. Silas slid a piece of paper across the table. It was an itinerary. Marcus is speaking at the Builders Association charity dinner tonight at 8. Vanessa is going with him. They'll be gone for 4 hours. I looked at the clock. It was 6 p.m. I felt a flutter of fear in my chest, beating like a trapped bird. But then I touched my arm, where the ghost of Marcus's grip still throbbed. I thought about the families who would move into that death trap. I thought about my father, who spent his life fixing things so other people could be safe. I'll do it, I said. Silas nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. Good. But, Elara, if he catches you. He won't, I said, standing up. Because he thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'm crying in a motel room. He has no idea the wolf is already at the door. The penthouse was silent. The service elevator opened directly into the utility room, bypassing the main foyer. I stepped out, my sneakers silent on the marble floors. The air smelled of Marcus's expensive cologne and something else, Vanessa's cloying, floral perfume. It made my stomach turn. I moved through the hallway like a ghost in my own life. I passed the dining room where we had hosted Thanksgiving dinners. I passed the living room where I had learned to knit. Every corner held a memory, and every memory felt like a lie. I reached the study. The heavy oak doors were closed. I pushed them open. The room was a shrine to Marcus's ego. Awards on the shelves, photos of him shaking hands with mayors and celebrities. And in the corner, behind the painting of a sailboat he had never sailed, was the wall safe. I knew the combination. It was his birthday. Narcissist to the end. I pulled the painting aside. My fingers hovered over the keypad. 0-4-1-2-8-0. Click. The heavy steel door swung open. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached inside. Stacks of cash. Passports. And at the bottom, a thick leather binder marked Riverfront, Confidential. I pulled it out. My hands were shaking. I flipped it open. Structural integrity assessment, fail. Recommendation, cease construction immediately. I had it. The smoking gun. I pulled out my phone to snap pictures of the pages, just in case. Flash. 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 Well. The voice came from the doorway. I spun around, the binder slipping from my hands and hitting the floor with a heavy thud. Vanessa was standing there. She wasn't at the gala. She was wearing a silk robe, holding a glass of wine, and leaning against the doorframe with a smile that didn't reach her cold, dead eyes. I told Marcus you'd come back, she purred, taking a sip of wine. He thought you were too pathetic. But I knew. I knew you were a sneak. I stared at her, my mind racing. Why wasn't she with him? Where is Marcus? I demanded, trying to keep my voice from trembling. Oh, he's on his way, she said, pulling a cell phone from her pocket. I just texted him. He's turning the car around right now. And Elara? He is very unhappy. She took a step forward, blocking the only exit. You're trespassing, darling. And in this state, we have very strict laws about intruders. If Marcus were to, say, mistake you for a burglar and shoot you, well, it would be a tragedy. But a legal one. She smiled, a cruel, twisting thing. Run, little mouse. Before the cat comes home. The collapse of the house of cards. The silence in the study was heavy, broken only by the hum of the wine fridge and the frantic thumping of my own heart. Vanessa stood in the doorway, a vision in silk and malice, swirling the Chardonnay in her glass like she was watching a play she had already written the ending to. She thought she had me. She thought I was the trembling housewife who had cried over flower arrangements. She didn't see the binder in my hand. She didn't see the fire in my gut. You think he's coming to save you? I asked, my voice low. You think Marcus is the hero of the story? Vanessa laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. He's the owner of this penthouse, Elara. And you're the ex-wife breaking and entering. He doesn't need to be a hero. He just needs to call the police. Or maybe he'll handle it himself. He's been under so much stress lately, he might snap. I took a step toward her. I didn't back down. I didn't look for a window. I looked her right in the eyes. He's stressed because he's broke, Vanessa. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Don't be ridiculous. He's leveraged. The cars are leased. This apartment is mortgaged twice. And that building project? The one he's pinning his salvation on? It's a fraud. I held up the binder. I have the engineer's report. It proves he's building a death trap. He's not a tycoon, Vanessa. He's a criminal. And he's drowning. Liar. She hissed, the composure cracking. He's worth millions. He's worth negative millions. And when this goes public, which it will, in about an hour, the banks are going to take everything. This penthouse, the jewelry he bought you, the car parked downstairs. It's all going to vanish. You didn't steal a fortune, Vanessa. You stole a bankruptcy case. Her eyes darted to the binder, then back to my face. Greed and fear warred behind her mascara. She wasn't loyal to Marcus. She was loyal to the lifestyle. And I had just told her the lifestyle was a hallucination. Give me that book. She lunged. She wasn't a fighter. She was a woman who lunged. She clawed at the binder, her nails digging into my wrist, the wine glass flying from her other hand and shattering against the awards shelf. Red wine splashed across Marcus's Man of the Year plaque like blood. Let go, she shrieked, yanking at the leather cover. I didn't let go. I shoved. I put 12 years of repressed anger, 12 years of silence, and the strength of a superintendent's daughter into one hard push. Vanessa stumbled back, her heels catching on the Persian rug. She went down hard, landing in a heap of silk and shock. I didn't wait for her to get up. I bolted. I ran past her into the hallway, my sneakers squeaking on the marble. The service elevator was 40 feet away. I heard Vanessa screaming behind me. Stop her. Security. She's got the files. I hit the call button. The light didn't turn on. It was locked out. Marcus must have triggered the security from his car. I swore under my breath and sprinted for the stairwell. I threw my shoulder against the heavy fire door and tumbled onto the concrete landing. I didn't stop. I ran down. Flight after flight. My breath burned in my throat. I could hear the echo of the heavy door slamming above me, and then, nothing. I made it to the lobby level, bursting through the door into the service corridor just as the main elevator chimed. I froze behind a janitor's cart. The elevator doors slid open. Marcus stepped out. He looked manic. His tie was gone, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He marched toward the front desk, shouting at the concierge. Where is she? Is the perimeter secured? I want the police called now. I shrank back into the shadows. If he saw me, he would tackle me. He didn't care about scenes anymore. He was fighting for his life. I waited until he stormed toward the elevators, distracted by his own rage. Then I slipped out the side exit into the cool night air. I didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away. I hailed a cab, my hands shaking so badly I could barely open the door. Where to? The district attorney's office, I gasped. And hurry. The next 48 hours were a blur of fluorescent lights, bitter coffee, and the scratching of pens on legal pads. Silas met me at the DA's office. We didn't just hand over the binder, we handed over a roadmap to Marcus's destruction. The assistant DA, a sharp woman named Harper with eyes like flint, looked through the photos I had taken and the physical binder. She looked at the fraudulent purchase orders Silas had pulled. She looked at the fake safety inspections. This is reckless endangerment, she said, her voice flat. Fraud. Conspiracy. If this building had gone up, people would have died. She looked at me. You're willing to testify? Against your ex-husband? I thought about the young couples Marcus had targeted with his ads. I thought about the families putting their life savings into condos made of sand and lies. I'm not just willing, I said. I'm insisting. The raid happened at dawn on a Tuesday. I watched it on the news from the safety of my hotel room. The camera crews were waiting. Silas had tipped them off. They caught the moment the FBI agents walked Marcus out of his office in handcuffs. He tried to hide his face with his jacket, but he couldn't hide the slump of his shoulders. He looked small. The news anchor's voice was grave. Breaking news. Prominent developer Marcus Morton arrested in massive real estate fraud scheme. Sources say the alleged riverfront project was structurally unsound and financially insolvent. My phone buzzed. It was Silas. It's done, Elara. The assets are frozen. The business license is suspended. It's over. I turned off the TV. I thought I would feel triumphant. I thought I would want to pop champagne. Instead, I just felt exhausted. It was the exhaustion of carrying a heavy weight for a long time and finally setting it down. But the wolves weren't done yet. A week later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered it, expecting a reporter. Elara? The voice was ragged. Broken. It took me a moment to recognize it. Marcus? Please, don't hang up. He sounded like he was crying. Or maybe he had been crying for days. I'm at a payphone, Elara. They took my phone. They took everything. Vanessa, she left. She took the jewelry and ran to Miami the day the story broke. I didn't say anything. I just listened to the traffic noise in the background of his call. I'm out on bail, he continued, his voice cracking. My brother put up his house. But I have nothing, Elara. No lawyer will touch me without a retainer. I'm going to prison. You committed fraud, Marcus, I said quietly. You hurt people. I know. I know I messed up. But I can fix it. I just need a chance. Elara, please. You have the resources now. You have the trust. If you could just loan me enough for a defense team, if you could just help me settle with the creditors. I could avoid jail. We could figure this out. I closed my eyes. I remembered the man who had charmed me 12 years ago. The man who had brought me flowers. The man who had promised to take care of me. We were married for 12 years, Elara, he pleaded. Doesn't that mean anything? I opened my eyes and looked at the city skyline. It means I know exactly who you are, Marcus. I'm begging you. I have no one. You had me, I said. You had a wife who loved you when you were nobody. You had a partner who supported you. And you threw me out on the street with $43 because you wanted more. You wanted the money, Marcus. You wanted the power. Well, now you have the consequences. Elara, please. No, Marcus. I'm not going to save you. I'm not going to rob my father's legacy to pay for your crimes. You made your bed. Now you have to sleep in it. I hung up. I blocked the number. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Part of me, the old part, the pleaser, wanted to help. But the new part, the woman my father had raised, knew that enabling a monster wasn't kindness. It was weakness. I sat in the silence of the room, feeling the final tether to my old life snap. I was free. But freedom, I was learning, was lonely. My phone buzzed again. I braced myself for another attack, another plea. But it was a text from Beatrice. I saw the news. About Marcus. Is it true he's broke? I typed back, yes. 3 dots appeared. She was typing. Then stopped. Then typing again. Does that mean you're not going to lose the money to him in court? I sighed. Even now, with Marcus in handcuffs, she was thinking about the payout. The money is safe, Beatrice. Good. We need to talk. I spoke to a lawyer. He says since Dad died without updating his will regarding the trust, I might have a claim on the intent of the estate. Don't make me do this, Elara. Just cut me a check. $5 million. That's all I ask. It's a drop in the bucket for you. I stared at the screen. My sister. My own blood. She didn't care that I had almost been arrested. She didn't care that my ex-husband was a criminal. She just saw a checkbook. I realized then that the money wasn't a blessing to everyone. To Marcus, it was a target. To Beatrice, it was a drug. To my father, it had been a tool. I needed to decide what it was to me. I called Silas. Silas, I said when he answered. I'm done with the hotel. I'm done hiding. Good, he said. What's the next move? Do we settle with your sister? No, I said firmly. We don't settle with terrorists, family, or otherwise. But Silas. I need to set up a meeting. Not with lawyers. With a realtor. And a non-profit consultant. You're starting a business? No, I said, a smile finally touching my lips. I'm starting a revolution. I want to buy the building. Which building? The tenement. The one my dad took care of. And I want to buy the empty lot next to it. Elara, that's a terrible investment. The neighborhood is. The neighborhood is my home, Silas. And I'm going to fix it. I hung up and walked to the window. I looked down at the street, at the people walking below, unaware of the millions moving above their heads. I wasn't going to be the rich divorcee who lunched in Paris. I wasn't going to be the victim. I was going to be the superintendent. I was going to fix the broken things. But first, I had one last visit to make. One last conversation to have with the man who started it all. The architect of second chances. The grass at Oakwood Cemetery was wet with morning dew, soaking through the knees of my jeans as I knelt. I didn't care. I placed a bouquet of yellow roses, his favorite, against the simple gray headstone. It read, Arthur Vance. Beloved father. A man of quiet strength. I traced the letters with my finger. The stone was cold, but I felt a warmth spreading through my chest, a thawing of the ice that had encased my heart since the day Marcus threw me out. Hi, Dad, I whispered. The wind rustled the leaves of the old oak tree above me, sounding like a sigh. I'm sorry it took me so long to come back. I was angry. I admitted it to the stone. I admitted the rage I had felt when I first saw that bank balance. The confusion. Why did you let us struggle? Why did you patch your boots with duct tape? Why did you let Beatrice mock you? Why did you let me marry a man who only loved money when you had enough money to buy his entire world? But I think I understand now, I said, my voice trembling. You weren't hiding the money from me. You were protecting me from it. You knew that if I had grown up with $47 million, I wouldn't be Elara. I would be Vanessa. I would be soft. I wouldn't know how to survive. I wiped a tear from my cheek. You wanted me to know who I was without the money first. You wanted me to know that I could survive on $43 and a suitcase. You wanted me to know that my value didn't come from a bank account. And Dad, you were right. Because when the time came to fight, I didn't fight with your money. I fought with your grit. I stayed there for a long time, telling him everything. I told him about Marcus, about the fraud, about the look on Vanessa's face when her house of cards collapsed. I told him about Beatrice and how I had finally found the strength to say no to her greed. I'm not going to hoard it, Dad, I promise the silent grave. And I'm not going to waste it on yachts and parties. I'm going to build something. I'm going to fix the things you spent your life patching up. I stood up, brushing the dirt from my knees. I felt lighter. The burden of the secret was gone. The weight of the past was gone. All that was left was the future. And for the first time in my life, the future looked like a blank page that I was finally ready to write on. 6 months later, the ribbon cutting was a small affair. No press, no galas, no champagne. Just coffee, donuts, and the people who mattered. I stood in front of the renovated tenement building, the one I had grown up in. The brick had been power washed, the fire escapes painted a glossy black, and the windows replaced with energy-efficient glass. But the real change was inside. It wasn't just apartments anymore. The ground floor, the old basement where my father had lived, was now the headquarters of the Vance Foundation. We call it Second Chances, I said to the small crowd gathered on the sidewalk. There were 30 women standing there. Women I had met over the last few months. Women who had been divorced, discarded, left with nothing but debt and fear. Women like me. This isn't a charity, I continued, looking into their faces. This is a launchpad. We provide temporary housing. We provide legal counsel, courtesy of Mr. Silas Thorne, who has graciously agreed to be our lead shark. Silas, leaning against the building in a suit that cost more than the donuts, gave a rare, genuine smile and tipped his head. And we provide job training, I said. We don't give handouts. We give hand-ups. Because I know what it's like to stand on a sidewalk with one suitcase and feel like your life is over. I want this place to be the reminder that your life isn't over. It's just beginning. One of the women, a young mother named Sarah who had escaped an abusive marriage with nothing but her toddler, stepped forward and hugged me. She didn't say anything. She just held on tight. And in that hug, I felt more wealth than I had ever felt looking at the bank screen. Later that afternoon, I drove to the City Community College. This was the part of the legacy that made me most nervous. I sat in the back row of the auditorium as the dean announced the names. The Arthur Vance Memorial Scholarship. It was a full ride. Tuition, books, housing. But there was a catch. It wasn't for the student with the highest grades. It was for the student whose parent worked in maintenance, custodial services, or sanitation. It was for the kids of the invisible workers. The first recipient was a girl named Maya. She walked onto the stage, her eyes wide, clutching the certificate like a lifeline. I watched her father stand up in the audience. He was wearing a work uniform with a name patch that said Joe. His hands were rough, calloused, scarred from years of labor. He was crying, unabashedly weeping as he watched his daughter's future change in an instant. He looked just like my dad. After the ceremony, Maya and her father found me. "Miss Vance?" Maya asked, her voice shaking. I don't know how to thank you. My dad, he works double shifts so I can take classes. But we were going to run out of money next semester. You saved my dream." I shook my head, taking her hands in mine. "No, Maya. Your dad saved your dream. He worked those double shifts. He sacrificed. I just balanced the scales a little bit. I turned to her father. Joe took his cap off, twisting it in his hands. "Thank you, ma'am," he choked out. "You have no idea. You have no idea what this means." I looked at his hands, hands that fixed things, hands that cleaned up messes, hands that built the world but never got to own a piece of it. "I think I do, Joe," I said softly. My father was a superintendent. He fixed toilets and changed light bulbs for 40 years so I could stand here today. He taught me that the measure of a person isn't what they have, but what they give. Joe nodded, standing a little taller. "He was a good man, your dad." "He was the best," I said. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment. It wasn't a penthouse. It was a nice, two-bedroom unit in a quiet neighborhood. I had a view of the park, not the skyline. My phone buzzed with an email from Silas. Subject: Update on M. Morton. I opened it. The plea deal is finalized. 5 years in federal prison for fraud and reckless endangerment. Asset liquidation is complete. He has 0 equity remaining. Beatrice has also ceased contact after my office sent her a cease and desist regarding her harassment. You are clear, Elara. You are completely free. I set the phone down. I thought about Marcus, sitting in a cell, blaming everyone but himself. I thought about Beatrice, stewing in her bitterness, convinced she had been robbed. They were both trapped. Not by bars, but by their own entitlement. They thought the world owed them something. I took a sip of tea and looked at the stars. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't afraid. I was just Elara. I thought about the woman I had been 6 months ago, shaking in the bank, terrified of the future. And I thought about the woman I was now, the architect of second chances. My father had left me $47 million. But that wasn't the inheritance. The inheritance was the spine he had helped me grow. The inheritance was the knowledge that I could lose it all tomorrow and still be okay, because I knew how to work. I knew how to build. And I knew how to stand alone. He gave me freedom. Not the freedom to buy things, but the freedom to choose who I wanted to be. I smiled, raising my tea mug to the sky. I choose to be the woman who fixes things, Dad. Just like you. And to everyone watching this, maybe you're standing on a sidewalk right now. Maybe you feel like your life has burned down. Maybe you've been betrayed, discarded, or left with nothing but a few dollars and a heavy heart. Listen to me. Your value is not in your bank account. Your value is not in who you married. Your value is in your ability to get back up. To take the broken pieces of your life and build something new. Something stronger. If you believe in second chances, if you believe that true wealth is what you do for others, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded of their own strength. And subscribe, because we're just getting started building this community. I'm Elara Vance. And I'm finally home.